Stevie's Next. My name's Anthony Stauffer, and this is the first in a 7-part series of lessons talking about blues boxes and patterns. This lesson is more or less just going to be an overview of all the different boxes and patterns that Stevie used and that you can use when you're playing any kind of blues song. And I'm going to introduce each of the boxes. I'm going to talk about different riffs that are used in each of the boxes, and I'm also going to show you the structure and how they connect. In the lessons that follow, I'm going to go into each box in a little bit more detail, explaining just different options that you can do within that box and ways that you can connect them together to allow you to play up and down the neck without having to break your solo. First of all, though, I want to talk about why the blues boxes are important. And kind of the holy grail of musicianship, at least in this form of music, is being able to improvise. And I've had different people ask me at different times, you know, how do you plan out your solos and stuff like that? And in a sense, I could always say that I kind of played off the top of my head, but that's not entirely true, because improvisation is really nothing more than just knowing enough stuff by memory that you can move in and out of different parts of what you already know without thinking about it too much. There's actually, I think, very few musicians who actually just play off the cuff without ever having thought about what they're going to play. I don't know whether or not you could say that playing something that you've played before is not really improvisation, but the reason that blues boxes are important is because it gives you a kind of a map of the whole neck of the guitar. It shows you the different states inside that map, if you will. And it, you know, you get familiar with each of those different areas, and you get familiar with the ways that they connect. And so it gives you a very large, comfortable region of the guitar that you can play in, and you can actually kind of look like you're playing just off the top of your head because you're so familiar with it from top to bottom. So that's kind of what I call the myth of improvisation. You're not really making stuff up. You're basically just playing pieces of what you've practiced so many times in just random orders. It's kind of like doing math. So like I said before, the blues boxes that I'm going to talk about they take this, you know, 22 or 24 fret guitar neck, depending on what kind of guitar you have, and it takes it from just being a series of numbers to actually kind of making it look like a map. With different states on the map, and there's boundary lines between the different boxes, just like there's boundary lines between different states. And within each box, which is kind of like, you know, inside of a given state, there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do just inside of that one box. But then in between boxes, just like in between states, there are highways that connect them. And there's different riffs that serve as highways to connect one box to the next. And it allows you to form combination riffs that start in one box and end in another. So there's a couple of things that, in order to be able to use these well, you need to be able to learn. First thing is, you've got to know the individual boxes very, very well. You've got to be familiar with all the, you know, the different kind of riffs that you can play within those boxes. You got to be comfortable there. You got to know what notes are inside that box, how it connects to the other boxes. The second thing is you need to understand the map of the whole guitar neck and how the different boxes connect. Otherwise, you'll do a lot of soloing in one box and you'll never move outside of that, and you'll miss large pieces of his style. The next thing is, anytime you're playing a given riff, you need to know where you're playing in relation to the whole map. So it's a combination of knowing the box and knowing the map. So it's like if you're driving around some state and you know that you're in a certain state, but you don't understand the whole map as to what state comes next, you're not sure where to go next depending on where you're trying to get to. So if I'm playing up here and I'm not sure where in the map I'm playing at, I don't know if I need to go up or down to get to the next part of the riff. So it's just a matter of becoming familiar with the individual pieces, the whole thing, and then being aware at any given time where you are in that big map of the fretboard. All right, so I'm going to move on to the 6 different boxes, which is 6 boxes and 1 pattern, actually, to be exact. And I'm going to I'm going to go over them in the key of A flat because that gives me a latitude to go up and down. And the first box is what I call, box number 1, or the root box. And that's the one that you'll hear riffs like this in. I call it the root box because it starts on the root chord here. So if I'm playing an A flat and here's my root chord, the box centers around those notes, and I'm going to go over the structure of it in a little bit. But the kind of riffs that you'll hear in this box are things like so riffs like that, and also rhythm patterns like from Cold Shot, and so anything of that style you'll find in this box. Songs that use this box a lot are like Texas Flood, obviously Cold Shot, and really this is the one that Stevie based a lot of his playing out of. Not all of it, but a lot of riffs that he did started here, and this is whenever he was on the one chord of a song, he spent a lot of time in this box. He would do things like so that's all within the one box. Anytime that he would do riffs like that, so anytime you hear stuff like that, he's playing in the one box there. Alright, what you're looking at here is a diagram of box 1 overlaid on top of a fretboard. And this is a pattern that you have to become familiar with because a lot of the riffs that you play will start or end on the notes that I've highlighted here. Now inside of this box, some of the notes that don't have the number 1 on them are also used in riffs, but the notes that I have the 1 on outline the kind of boundaries of this box, and they're the main notes that you'll start riffs on and end them on, and so on and so forth. Alright, so let's move on to box 2, which I call the Albert King box. Now from the root box, we're just going to slide up here, and I'm going to show you the structure of this box in a little bit like I did for the root box. Examples of some riffs that you'll hear in this box are things like this. And that's really, that really kind of sums up what this box is good for. Now obviously there's different ways that you can mix it up. This is also the box where Stevie would do his 3-string bends on. Songs that use this box a lot, obviously The Sky is Crying, Texas Flood, basically any slow blues song, Stevie would play a lot of things in this box, especially on Ain't Give It Up on Love, or Ain't Gonna Give Up on Love. He borrows a lot of things from Albert King in that song, and he sticks to that box a lot more in that song than he does in any of his other songs. And this box I call the Albert King box because Albert King really kind of, there were players before him that used it a lot, but he really kind of put this, I don't want to say put this box on the map because that's kind of stupid, but he used that box an awful lot, and he had that really intense sound that Stevie Ray Vaughan and his brother Jimmy, that really inspired them to kind of want to pick up that sound, and obviously many players after them as well. Alright, so let's take a look at the structure of the Albert King box. Alright, so here I have overlaid box 2 on top of the fretboard here, and I've taken box 1 and I've left it there, but I've dimmed it down a little bit just so you can see how they interact with each other. And there's 2 notes that they share, the top 2 notes of box 1 and the
two lowest notes on the fretboard of box 2 are on the same fret. Now, it's important to realize that just because these are the notes that I've highlighted doesn't mean that they're the only way that you play them. In particular, in this box, the very top note is most often involved in a bend, which would extend it a whole step up the fretboard even more. But for the sake of simplicity, these are the main notes inside of box 2 and the ones that you need to be familiar with, because these are the notes that you'll be starting and ending the different bends and the riffs on inside of this box.
All right, let's move on to the B.B. King box. And I call this one the B.B. King box because he played in it a lot more than Stevie did, and a lot of the riffs that you play here are kind of immediately associated with his playing style. If this is the root box, and this is the Albert King box, this is the B.B. King box. Now, you'll notice that it's pretty much identical in shape to the Albert King box when I get into the structure a little bit later. What makes it different is that it touches on a lot of the notes that form the major root chord. So examples of some riffs that are played in this box are things like so there's not a huge variety of stuff that you can do here. There is some interesting things that you can do to work in a little bit more of a minor sound. There's not a huge number of things that you can do with this box, but I like to think of it as kind of a way to add a completely different sound to a normally minor blues song. So if you think of something like Texas Flood, that's a lot of, since we're in A flat, let's think of a song like Ain't Gonna Give Up on Love. I like to think of this box as a way to add a little bit of more kind of melodic, happy-sounding soloing to a song. If you think about a song like Ain't Gonna Give Up on Love, that's a lot of kind of minor, intense blues-sounding stuff, but if you throw a little bit of this in there, it adds a little bit of a happier sounding, it just adds a different angle to the song. And certainly it's not appropriate in all songs. If you're playing a minor blues song like Tin Pan Alley, that kind of riff's not going to go over real well because it kind of interrupts the vibe of the song. But it is something that's useful anytime that you're trying to give a song kind of a different dimension. So, all right, so let's look over the... well, first let me talk about some songs that use this box. The song Tightrope... you'll hear that in a lot of Stevie's live performances of Tightrope. He goes into this box a little bit in the solo. And I taught a lesson on that a while back. I'm playing it in a different key here. But yeah, on the album version, he goes into that box a little bit, but in the live versions, he used to just sit up there for quite a while. He also used to play in this box a decent amount in songs like, what am I thinking of here? Life Without You, which is another one of my favorite songs of his. And so those are two songs where he would play in that box a little bit more than usual. All right, so let's take a look at the structure of the B.B. King box.
All right, here we have box 3, or the B.B. King box as I think of it, overlaid on the fretboard, and you can see how it ties into boxes 1 and 2, just like the relationship between box 1 and 2, you can see that box 2 and 3 also share a boundary with 2 notes there. And even though the shape is very similar to box 2, the kind of riffs that you can play there and still sound good are very different, because it happens to be at a spot that's more conducive to playing major sounding, melodic, happy sounding riffs. Still do bends here like you do in box 2, but I'll go into more detail on how to effectively use this box to do some of these riffs in a later lesson. But for now, just memorize the structure and the relative position to box 2.
Let's move on to box 4, which I'm calling the Clapton box. And the reason I'm calling it the Clapton box is because he's the only person, maybe besides Santana, that I've really heard play in this box very much. And there's really just one signature riff that I've heard him do. Most people don't play in this box very much at all, because it's kind of like halfway between the bottom and the top. And the box is right here, so that's the B.B. King box. And this box, so the only major riff that I can, there's only 2 really kind of major riffs that I can think of in this box. The first one is, Clapton used to do this. I'm probably playing that a little bit wrong, but that's the essence of what he would do there. And then the other one is just... And really, if you think about it, this part of the box is just a repeat of the Albert King box. The only difference is that now you have somewhere to go above it. Okay, so there's really not much to that box. It's not used very often in Stevie style. It is helpful to know if you're trying to go from the bottom of the neck to the top and you need something to do after you get to the B.B. King box. Alright, so now let me show you the structure of the box 4, which I'm calling the Clapton box.
Alright, here I'm showing box 4 overlaid on the fretboard next to box 3. You can see that they share 1 note on their boundaries. And like I said, this box is not used a whole lot in most players that I listen to. However, it is something that's useful to know, because otherwise you'll have a gap in the fretboard where you don't have anything to play, and it's very hard to play a very seamless solo whenever you have a gap that you don't know any riffs in. So even though I only really know 2 riffs in this box, I do end up using them when I'm, trying to solo from bottom to top, or from top to bottom there without, interrupting the flow of the solo.
All right, the next box that I want to talk about is what I'm calling box 5, or the major root box. The reason I call it the major root box is that if you think about box 1, which I call the root box, you take that exact form and you slide it down 3 frets. All of a sudden you have a happier sounding, more major tonality box. Now, to put it in context with everything we just learned, if this is the Clapton box, we're just going to slide up here, which is 3 frets down from the root box, an octave up from where we started. So that box is the same up here, and I call it the major root box because it has the same form as the root box, just 3 frets down. Now, examples of some riffs that can be played in this box. If you think about Lynyrd Skynyrd's "Give Me 3 Steps," obviously they're playing in a different key than that. "Life Without You," example of how he slides out of this box into the root box. And this box is known just as much for its chords as it is for its notes. For example, that's the kind of like the Hendrix hammer-on signature chord there. You're really just playing in the major root box, or box 6 as I'm calling it, or box 5. Alright, let's take a look at the actual structure of this box and the notes that make it up.
Here we have box 5 overlaid on the fretboard. You can see it overlaps box 4 by 1 fret, even though it doesn't really share any notes with box 4. And even though it looks like box 1, you have to be careful where you end your riffs because the root note is at the top of the box instead of the bottom, like it is when you are playing in the root position. This box is mainly used for more B.B. King style happy sounding riffs, but it is possible to get some minor blues out of this box using some kind of hidden notes in this box, which I'll explain in a lesson where I'm just talking about this particular box. They share boundaries. And the exciting thing about this is that if you really get this, like if you really start to understand these boxes, all of a sudden the fretboard doesn't just seem like a series of frets anymore. It seems like a map. And you know exactly where to go. You know exactly what you can play, where you can end riffs. And it's all based on knowing these boxes inside and out. And in subsequent lessons, I'm going to go into more detail about each one and talk about little tricks to navigate inside of each one and how to connect with the other ones.
All right, so let's talk about how these boxes can be used in any key that you play in. And this is where it's important to make a distinction between the guitar and the piano. In a piano, you've got a repeating set of black and white keys, but depending on what key you're playing in, you play different black keys and different white keys for the chord, the major keys in that key. That's redundant. In guitar, it's a little bit simpler. If I'm playing in the key of F sharp here, that's my 1, that's my 4, and this is my 5. What if I find out the key is A flat instead of F sharp? I can use the same relative position on the guitar neck and basically play the same thing, and all of a sudden I'm playing an A flat. And so you can look like you're a very accomplished musician just by realizing that you can move what you're playing up or down the neck and be in the right key. So if I start in the key of F sharp, and that's my root box, here's my Albert King box, here's my B.B. King box, and the Clapton box, and the major root box, and back up to the root box. Now let's all of a sudden we're going into different songs in the key of A flat. I can play the exact same pattern. Just depends on where you start. So the tricky thing is you just gotta know what the map looks like independent of the fretboard, and then when you go and apply it to the fretboard, you can just place it, you can just plop it down right here, and you can know that box 1, box 2, box 3, box 4, box 5, and the root box. And you can stick that in any key, and the only thing that you need to be aware of is when you're getting too high to keep going up and you need to drop down. So for example, if I'm in the key of in the key of A flat here, and I'm playing in the octave up root box. And I want to go to the Albert King box. Very difficult to play up there, so I need to know that I'm kind of at the end of the map, and I need to circle back around and drop down an octave into the Albert King box above the root box down here. So you can move the map up and down the neck and just stick within the patterns in any key. You just need to know when you're getting kind of toward the edge of the earth, as it were. Alright, so in conclusion, we went over 5 boxes today and 1 pattern. And in order to use these boxes to your advantage, there's 3 things that you need to know. Number 1, you need to know each of the individual boxes inside and out. Now, I'm going to be teaching individual lessons on each of these boxes later. You also need to know the whole map. You need to know how the boxes connect. So you need to know each box. You need to know where all the boxes are. And the last thing that you need to remember, and this one is the one that actually might be the most difficult, you need to know at any given time when you're playing a riff, not only what box you're playing in, but where in the map you're at, so that you know if you can go up, if there's room to go up, and if you go up, what box you're going to be into, and or whether or not you got to go down. So you got to know each box, you got to know the whole map, and you need to be aware of where you're at all times. And those are the 3 keys to being able to use these boxes to kind of fake improvising, as I like to say. So I hope this lesson was helpful to you, and I'm going to be teaching lessons in more depth on each of these boxes coming up. So enjoy.